Hey lovelies, it's Alex here. I have just finished writing and publishing a blog called 18 Summers and why it isn't quite so simple to make them count. I was really inspired to write this blog by a Facebook post that came around, said something like 18 summers, it's all you've got, make the most of them. And while I know that the people that send around these inspirational posts to mothers like me are well-intentioned and they serve to remind you, they're a perspective hack, like they serve to remind you how important this time is, how special, how precious this time is. But in my world, the consequence or the result is me actually feeling kind of guilty or doubtful that I can do it, that I can make the 18 summers count, or guilty and maybe not guilty, but confused as to why it feels so hard for me to make those 18 summers count. And I thought I'd hop on because I ended up writing this super long blog. Why does this ear plug keep falling out? Okay. I ended up writing this super long blog and I wanted to break it up for you. And I know you're super busy and a lot of you aren't able to read it all. I actually made a little audio of it, of me reading it. So if you want to listen to it instead of read it, then that's possible too. And then what I've decided to do is to create these short videos, breaking it down a little bit because I cover so many points and I kind of go on, get on my sort of, soapbox about why, why it is super important for these 18 summers to count, but why also it's really hard to make that happen in today's world. So I've got my little notes here. I guess the first point is that while these points are meant to be helpful and inspirational, the reality of our mothering experience in the modern world is one that actually leaves us feeling guilty and a little bit doubtful and maybe a little bit confused and maybe even more overwhelmed or stressed than we did before we read the post, right? So, and I don't know, tell me in the comments, do you feel this way when you read these posts or is it just me? Maybe it's just me. So, the second point that I want to make is that making these 18 summers count, right? Or actually making the entire motherhood season count. Being the best mother that you can be is not all that easy in today's world. And in the blog I talk about why that is true. And I will kind of go through it a little bit in this video, but really what I want to say and the message that I want to get across is that at least my experience as a mother, but also my experience as a coach for mothers, is that mothering is really, really complicated. It is an experience that can be humbling, that can turn us inside out, that can be exhausting. It kind of shines a mirror onto places in your soul that you didn't know exist. So what am I talking about here? It sounds so woo-woo. I have to say that since I've become a mother, I have felt feelings strongly, like in ways that I never anticipated. I've felt more love than I ever thought was possible. My heart has felt bigger than it ever has before. I felt more worried, anxious, and protective of my children than I've ever felt about anything else. Willing to give up everything, for them. And at the same time, I have felt feelings like frustration, claustrophobia, irritation, impatience, exhaustion, resentment, anger, rage, annoyance. All of these things I used to be quite a, people used to think that I was quite relaxed, chilled out person. And I used to think, sure, I was type A, but within that, I was kind of yoga going type A. But after I had kids, there were just sides of me that I'd never seen before. And so I really feel like if you are to embrace those experiences and learn from those experiences and follow the compass that is your feelings, then motherhood can be an amazing learning opportunity for you. But it's not an easy journey. It's not an easy learning experience. It can take you down to your knees. Like I said, it can be humbling. And a lot of the time, it invites you to look at all your narratives, your self-talk, your personas or saboteurs, your shadow, whatever, you want to call them, your inner functionings, your inner world. A lot of it comes out when you face the challenges that you face being a mother. So it's complicated, and in the blog I say, it's hard, it's really hard as in it's difficult, and sometimes you feel really hard, and sometimes you actually close yourself a little bit, and that's probably to protect yourself from the sense of vulnerability that it brings and all the emotions that it brings. So it can also be, funnily enough, super soft, right? Those really, really soft and tender moments. I've never had softer and more tender moments than I've had with my children. So it's hard and it's soft. How can it be those two things? It's also something that intrinsically to be super important for the lives of these little people, and collectively, I think intuitively we know that it's critical. Our jobs as mothers, raising these children, future generations today, is super, super important. We have a lot of influence and a lot of power. No matter how powerless we feel, we do have a lot of influence and we do have a lot of power in the lives of these children. Just think who influenced you the most growing up, right? It's likely to have been your mother. And so the blueprint that you have, the way you mother, is likely based on your experience as a child yourself. So just, it's really important. We kind of know that at some level, but at another level, because of what society tells us and because of the way mothers are treated, and this is particularly true, I think, in Western society, it's confusing because the messaging is that being a stay-at-home mother or taking time off work to mother, whether it's a day or an afternoon or 3-4 years, it's not valued. It's not only is it not valued, in economic terms, but it's also misunderstood. So people wonder what mothers do all day, People wonder, and we wonder what we do all day. I remember when I first had kids, I was like, how on earth is it 7 o'clock at night and I haven't even managed to have a shower? What happened? And when my husband came home and he'd ask me, so how was your day? What did you do today? I couldn't even answer. It was all just this huge fog of diapers and breastfeeding and, exhaustion and trying to get it right and looking something up on the internet about the color of my kid's mucus or poo or something. It was all just this huge, big cloud of, I don't know what. But of course, every moment that you spend with that child, every response, every smile, every eye gaze, all of it counts. And it's super important, but because it's not valued by society, because we can't measure it the way we've been trained to measure things, it doesn't really, from the rational part of us, doesn't really understand its value. So there's all these kind of contradictions and which make motherhood feel super, super complicated to us. So, I think all of this is very much, it kind of circles back to that point, right? That sure, it's great to say, make your 18 summers count, make the mothering experience, be the best that you can be. It's easy to say that, but it's not easy to practice. It's not easy to practice. And that's why I do the work that I do. because I know that it's not easy to practice, because I've experienced the stress and the overwhelm and the self-doubt and the guilt and the frustration and the resentment and everything else, the claustrophobia, like all of that. I've experienced that, and I want to save people time by helping them not to experience it. And one thing that I want to touch upon in this video is that the piece around time. I think that what we all yearn for as mothers is quality time. We have FOMO, fear of missing out on the precious moments, right? And we have that, and then we have guilt for not being present enough because we're doing stuff. We're doing stuff that makes us feel like we're achieving, whether it's in the working space or it's in the, at home. At home. So I've been both. I've been the work out of the house mom, and I've been the stay-at-home mom. Now I'm actually a work from home mom. So I've combined the two worlds. But in both cases, there's this sense that you're not enough. You're not spending enough time. You don't have enough quality time with your children. And I think that this is really, really important for us to talk about, because the expectations that we internalize as mothers, and these are around, feeding your kids right, everything like education, enrichment around your children, making sure that you're consciously parenting them, making sure that, they are, learning more than one language, making sure they get enough exercise, making sure they get the right kind of screen time or limited amounts of screen time, kind of constant sort of monitoring like all their stimulation that comes into them. We are so worried about our kids. And so just as, the science of parenting starts to give us the tools and the strategies to raise children, instead of us kind of taking them with discernment and calmly, we freak out and we add to our to-do list, and it kind of contributes to a sense of overwhelm and stress, and it ironically takes away quality time. We have started to believe that what we need to do to be a good parent, to be a good mother, is more. We need to do more and we need to be more. Even though statistics show that we are actually spending more time than ever with our children, we still push ourselves to do and to be more. And I would say to give and provide more than ever before. And so this, ironically, takes us away, disconnects us, because we're rushing about, we're frazzled, our mind is full, overly full. Our schedules are completely overly full. All of this means that we just don't have time to breathe and to be and to connect with ourselves and with our children. And so it's that lack of presence that they yearn for, and that of course we need to build stronger connections. So it's this whole huge kind of cyclical irony. We're trying to be and do better, but the consequence of that is that we disconnect from ourselves, and we disconnect from our children and from our families. And a lot of this is just driven by this, need to achieve and need to please culture that is surrounding the motherhood experience. So I think I'm going to stop it there for now, because it's a lot for you to take in, but I'd really love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think about these posts, these inspirational posts that come around aiming to inspire you? How do they leave you feeling? Do they leave you feeling good and inspired? Are they gentle reminders? Or do they actually leave you feeling, and maybe I'm overly sensitive, a little bit guilty or doubtful that you're not getting it right? And then confused that you don't know how, and why does it feel so hard to kind of get those 18 summers right? And then, what about your motherhood experience? Like, I'm curious, does it feel complicated and complex for you the way it does for me? Does it feel hard and soft at the same time? And do you ask yourself, how can it be? Do you feel like it's an opportunity for growth? Has it fed you? Has it taught you things about yourself that you've never known. Are you different today than you were before you had kids? And then lastly, I would just love to hear about your experience of time. You know, do you fall into the trap of trying to be and do more? Do you consequently result, you know, is the result of you doing and being more a sense of overwhelm and stress that takes you away from your children? I don't mean physically away, but I mean like, you know, in terms of conscious being present, being in the now with them, just being with them. Are you always trying to do and go, go, go? And if you are, I just, you know, there's another post that I have, a blog post that I have about the surprising reasons that, that mothers fall into the trap of overwhelm. And I can link to that below, but it might be interesting for you to have a look at that. Yeah, so I would just love to hear your feedback. Drop me your comments and let's get this conversation started. I'll be coming on live again next Thursday, so that, you know, where I'm going to talk a little bit more about this topic. I'm going to talk about what really pisses me off about this whole motherhood experience, and why I believe that we need to start doing things differently. We need to start empowering ourselves and doing things differently as mamas. Okay, signing off. Bye.